Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the 2024 Open Championship. Yes, it is called the Open Championship. I'm not going to be one of those Americans that refers to it as the British Open. Nah, it's the Open Championship. That is the name of it. The winner is called the Champion Golfer of the Year. I'm going to respect the traditions of our friends across the pond and refer to it as the Open Championship, or just the Open works as well. This is one of my favorite golf tournaments of the year. I love the fact that, we get golf when we wake up here in America. It's going to be on TV. I love that we get to see the best in the world, see a true links golf test like the game of golf was founded. I love it. Love this tournament. And here on this episode, we are going to break down all aspects of it. This is our all-in-one breakdown. So we're going to talk about the host course, Royal Troon itself. We are going to look at the key stats and create a custom model to try to get an idea of who is going to play well here. And then we are going to take a look at the DFS betting and one and done boards and kind of talk about who kind of piques our interest and what our strategies are going to be for those three games. So whether you are playing DFS, betting, player props, one and done, we have got you covered here in this preview. We're going to give you guys some information to help pick out some winners. Now, while you are here, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe on the audio as well as on the YouTube page. So that way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season, as well as all of our NFL, college football, college basketball content that's going to be coming your way. We've got some best ball content for both NFL and college football out already this summer. And please, please, please like the video, rate and review the audio. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. And if you're really feeling inclined, if I do help you out, please spread the word. Give this podcast out to a friend. Tell them that it helped you. Let's help build the community and make it as big as possible. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into Royal Troon. All right, so Royal Troon is not my favorite course that is in the open rota of host courses, but it is also far from my least favorite. I think that this is a perfectly fine Open Championship venue. It's a nice links test. It is kind of one of the more Americanized links courses, though, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So Royal Troon on the scorecard is a par 71, right around 7,600 yards. On YouTube, we are watching a flyover. Golf Digest has a video every hole at Royal Troon that I think is absolutely superb. Iona Steven of Sky Sports does the kind of commentary for it. It's great. If you're interested in golf course architecture, or if you just want some great views in a picturesque video, go check that out. Now, this 7,600 yards on the card, though, can play more or less depending on the wind direction. This course is quite literally right against the ocean. And so this is going to be heavily affected by the wind. And if the wind is blowing its normally prevailing direction, the front nine is going to be playing with a headwind. The back nine is going to be playing into the wind. So it can definitely make some of the holes on the back play a lot longer if there is the normal prevailing wind. If you do get a crosswind, however, it's going to kind of even everything out. Now, the scorecard numbers for some of these holes, there are some super long par fours that are going to play super difficult on the back nine. The par threes, there is one short one known as the postage stamp. Hole 8 is the shortest par 3 in the open rota. And then there's some super long par 5s, including the longest par 5 in the open rota. However, because that one is on the front nine, it will likely be reachable in 2 for most of the field if there is a normal prevailing wind. 6 of the last 7 winners at Royal Troon have been American. Henrik Stenson kind of breaking the streak when he won here in 2016, which was the last time that Royal Troon hosted the Open. That was home of the legendary Stenson-Mickelson duel, where pretty much they were the only 2 guys in contention at that tournament, and it was supremely entertaining to watch. Stenson kind of ran away with it at the end, though, and it kind of got a little anticlimactic at the end because they were the only 2 in contention, and by about hole 15, Stenson wrapped it up, and so the last 3 holes were almost just ceremonial. But anyway, aside from the winners being American, this course is also going to place a much bigger emphasis on precision than most Open Championship host courses. And also, it's going to feature greens that are a bent grass and POA mix, which you see in a lot of the Northern American courses, like the Detroit Golf Club, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, Hamilton Golf and Country Club hosts this year's RBC Canadian Open, and the Travelers Championship. You see this bent POA mix on the greens as well. That is in a direct contrast to the fescue of most other Open Championship host courses. Now, the fairways themselves at Royal Troon are about average width. On the front nine, they can actually get quite wide, but the landing zones are small. And the reason why is because on most of the holes, you have the quote unquote gorse bush. That is going to be the word of the week this week. The gorse bush surrounding the fairways that is not that far off from them. So if you miss big, you are going to be pretty much either losing your ball or having to just kind of pitch it back out in the fairway, because if you're in the gorse bush, you are not going to be able to hit it towards the green. So for that reason, you cannot have a big miss off the tee this week. And the architects of Royal Troon and kind of the superintendent, whoever's placing the tee boxes, has also been very strategic about the pot bunkers for this tournament this year. A lot of the pot bunkers that are fairway bunkers are placed at a distance that a lot of guys will be putting driver. And so for that reason, I think you're going to see a lot of guys opt to go with less than driver off the tee this week. The longer hitters in the field, though, will still be able to carry the fairway bunkers. It's just going to be a matter of, can they contain the big miss, because the big miss will kill you this week at Royal Troon. Looking at the results from 2016, you have two notorious club down off the tee players in Henrik Stenson and Phil Mickelson that ended up near the top of the leaderboard. So it would stand to reason that the skill set of clubbing down off the tee is one that is likely going to be pretty important this week. The greens themselves at Royal Troon are fairly small. They're smaller than PGA Tour average, and they will putt slower than PGA Tour average. The reason why the greens across the pond are slower is because with how much wind this course gets, a ball will literally roll off the green if the greens are set to play at a certain speed. So they set them pretty slow. It tends to favor putters who are better on slower greens. There's also fairway grass surrounding the greens. This is a normal links design in that regard. There's not a whole lot of thick rough surrounding the greens. So putting from the green, playing along the ground is going to be an option. That is going to be one thing we are going to look at when we do our custom model. Weather is always going to be an issue here in Scotland. It was a big factor in 2016, and it would be very wise to wait until we know everything about the weather that we possibly do before making DFS lineups, before constructing betting cards, before making a card for player props. Like, the weather is going to be a massive, massive factor. If you look at the results from 2016, Henrik Stenson and Phil Mickelson were like the best weather conditions. They naturally, like, they beat the field by a ton, but part of that was because they were out there playing the field in a very certain window of time where they got the optimal conditions. A lot of the best players from that event ended up, with a bad draw and ended up missing the cut. I remember that week, that was in the early days of golf DFS, was in the early days of me playing DFS. So I had one lineup where I had Phil and I had another like big name golfer, I can't remember. And I had Tony Finau, who ended up playing pretty well that week. And I had like a 4 of 6 that still cashed because there was just so much chaos with the wind, with so many big names missing the cut. So that is going to be something to certainly keep an eye out for when tee times are released, and to get a look at what the weather is going to look like as we head to Thursday and Friday, because those are going to be the days where it matters the most. And if you're looking to play on underdog, that's going to be a big one. The weather is going to impact big time the amount of birdies, bogeys, higher, lower strokes. I will say, if underdog does props where they separate the front nine and back nine, which they've been doing for majors, the front nine scoring this week should be significantly lower than the back nine. And if that is not reflected in the lines on underdog, then I would certainly be interested in investing in some of those underdog lines. Now, looking at course history. So we don't have like a big, list of history for guys that have played Royal Troon, because it has only been hosted there once in the last 8 years. But in terms of general Open history, who are some guys that play well at the Open Championship? Well, Cam Young has finished 2nd and 8th in the last 2 Opens. It's quite impressive. I'm going to try to get – there's naturally a lot of players who have played the Open. I'm not looking at a list that is filtered from, what's the word I'm looking for? Filter for this week's field. So I'm just going to kind of try to get the guys that are in this field that have great history at the Open. Victor Hovland has played the last 3 Openish worse than 13th. Jordan Spieth has played in the last 10 Opens and is the undisputed king of Open Championship history. In the last 5 editions, he has finished no worse than 23rd. Collin Morikawa has the distinction of winning in his Open Championship debut in 2021 and then missing the cut both times right after. Rory McIlroy also has an elite Open Championship history, his only missed cut being in 2019 at Royal Portrush. Tom Kim has played the last 2 Opens, made the cut at St. Andrews, and was a T2 last year at Royal Liverpool. Scotty Scheffler, 8th, 21st, and 23rd in his 3 Open appearances, which is solid, but not up to his normal lofty standards. Tony Finau has a great Open history track record as well. 9th, 3rd, 15th, 28th, and then his first miscut in the Open last year at Royal Liverpool. Xander Schauffele also has great history at the Opens, finished no worse than 41st in the last 5 years. And then Ricky Fowler also has a good Open Championship history. Adam Scott, Brian Harman, Tommy Fleetwood, John Rahm also showing up next on the list. So those are some guys, if you're just looking at Open Championship history, that you can look at this week. Now, let's go ahead and talk about our key stats for Royal Troon. So as always, strokes gained approach is going to be one of the key stats that is generally the best predictor of who is going to win on the PGA Tour week in and week out, as opposed to any other statistic. From an off the tee perspective this week, I'm looking at total driving as well as distance from edge of fairway. Total driving is a stat that kind of uses a formula, kind of like QB rating in the NFL, to maximize distance and accuracy off the tee and kind of give you one number that quantifies it. And so I'm looking at total driving this week because distance can be a big help, but accuracy is going to matter a ton. And another measure that I like for accuracy is distance from edge of fairway. I like that a lot better than driving accuracy because driving accuracy is very dichotomous. It's either hit or miss. Distance from edge of fairway, what it does is it looks at how far you missed the fairway when you did miss off the tee. So it is a great measure of overall control of the golf ball off the tee. It basically says you are not having big misses, or even if you do miss the fairway, you're keeping it in play, you're keeping it in good shape. With it being a links design, I do think that around the green play is going to be big. There's not going to be a very high green irregulation percentage this week with these greens being quite small and it being quite windy. So strokes gained around the green is going to be important. I would look at strokes gained putting on bent POA or slow greens if you have the opportunity to filter so. And then I want to see performance in Open Championships. I want to see guys who have played well at these types of courses. Now, some Open Championship courses are better comps than others. I do not think St. Andrews is a great comp. St. Andrews in 2022, you could just bomb it away with driver off the tee. The fairways were quite wide. The greens were quite large. It basically became a approach and putting contest from wherever your drive ended up because everybody was keeping their drives in play. So in terms of best comp courses, Royal Portrush is one that it hosted the Open in 2019, won by Shane Lowry. Very similar leaderboard at Portrush and Royal Troon. JB Holmes played well at both, well, until Sunday at Royal Portrush. Go look that up if you have time. Brooks Koepka played well at both. Tony Finau played well at both. Portrush featured a lot of similarities in the leaderboard that we saw in 2016 at Royal Troon. Royal Liverpool last year, I think, is a pretty good comp. The fairways are similar width here this week at Troon as they were to Liverpool. They're quite hard to hit. But at Royal Liverpool, the big miss was not punished as much as you see here at Royal Troon, because pretty much it was just thick, rough fescue grass, no matter how big you missed at Royal Liverpool, except for the few holes where there was internal OB. But I do think that in terms of a narrow fairways, bent grass greens, Open Championship host course, Royal Liverpool is not a bad look. And then in terms of American courses, Pebble Beach is the only one that I can really come up with. Pebble Beach is going to feature small greens. It is going to be quite windy. And it is a lot of holes that are less than driver off the tee. So to me, that is the best Americanized course that you can get to comp to Royal Troon here this week. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we are going to dive down the rabbit hole. So if you have been with us through the duration of the PGA Tour season, you know that when I say go down the rabbit hole, I'm referring to a tool from BetSpertsGolf.com called the Rabbit Hole. This is what I have been using for my data site this year. It allows you to do all kinds of filters and conditions to really weed out certain skill sets, certain components of the golf game, and really get some eyes on golfers that you might not have been able to do so if you did not have the opportunity to filter in a way that they do. They also have the ability to create a custom model, which I love. And I've gone ahead and ran a first version of my model. This is going to basically be everything that we just talked about in terms of the key stats and some more that we're going to look at in terms of who I think is going to play well this week. So the first thing to look at is with guys coming in from different tours, different states of game, just who is playing the best right now. So I wanted to just see strokes gained total last 36 rounds for everybody in the field. Top 10 in the field: Scheffler, Schauffele, McIlroy, Morikawa, Matsuyama, Davis Thompson playing sneaky good, Ludwig Oberg, Bryson DeChambeau, Fleetwood, and Finau rounding out the top 10. If we make it just strokes gained in majors, who pops up? Well, Scheffler, McIlroy, Schauffele, Morikawa, Rahm, Zalatoris, Cam Smith, Victor Hovland, Fleetwood, and Matsuyama as the top 10. If we make it strokes gained all links courses, which includes all Open Championship host courses, the Scottish Open, Pebble Beach, I believe Shinnecock Hills and Kiowa Island count for this as well. Top 10 in the field in links courses in their careers: Koepka, Fleetwood, Spieth, Schauffele, Cantlay, Stenson, Day, McIlroy, Finau, and Tom Kim. Lastly, for the strokes gained total, I wanted to look at just major links courses. So basically, this is just Open Championship host courses. So Brooks, Koepka, Spieth, Fleetwood, Schauffele, Finau, Stenson, McIlroy, Cam Young, Hovland, and Fowler as your top 10 there. Now, I also wanted to look at strokes gained total in windy conditions, because that is going to be super important if the wind picks up this week. Because these records go a ways back for him, Tiger Woods is number 1. Tony Finau, number 2. McIlroy, Rahm, M as the top 5. Bhatia, Scheffler, Zadenhoop, Justin Thomas, and Ben Griffin as your top 10. Those are some of the usual suspects that I perceive as being good in the wind, like McIlroy, Finau, Bhatia. So that's not super shocking that those results. The sample size on Tiger is kind of wild though. Now, I also want to look at total driving. So total driving, the last 36 rounds, the best in the field are Minwoo Lee, Ludwig Oberg, Mason Anderson, who I believe is an amateur, either that or a DP World Tour player, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Cameron Young, Rory McIlroy, Akshay Bhatia, Santiago De La Fuente, who is an amateur, and then Xander Schauffele rounding out the top 10, with Tyrrell Hatton and Sahith Theegala sitting just outside the top 10. I also want to look at strokes gained off the tee on less than driver courses. Who are the best at that? Scheffler, Hovland, DeChambeau, Rahm, Matsuyama, Oberg, Lee, Morikawa, Answer, M as your top 10. Distance from edge of fairway, like we talked about, is that stat that's going to measure who avoids the big miss. And some of these guys have a supremely low sample size. So of the guys that we're considering, Scotty Scheffler comes up first, Tom Kim second. Lowry Cantor is up near the top, along with some unknowns. Morikawa, Siwoo Kim, Brian Harmon, Victor Hovland, Russell Henley, Matt Fitzpatrick. Those are kind of the relevant names there. Now, I also want to look at recent approach play. Like we said, strokes gained approach is the biggest determining factor in winning events week in, week out. In the last 24 rounds, best players in the field on approach: Scheffler, Finau, Connors, Schauffele, Oberg, Hoagie, Southgate, Straka, Smith, and Tom Kim. Jordan Smith, number 9, that is. Now, I also want to look at strokes gained on approach into small greens. So when you filter out the small greens, who are the best players on approach? Well, it's a lot of the usual suspects: Scheffler, Finau, Schauffele, Cam Smith, Henrik Stenson, Hovland, Henley, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, and Rory McIlroy rounding out the top 10. Now, I also want to look at 3 different around the green metrics. First is just around the green baseline from the last 50 rounds. Who are the best players in the field in around the green play? Matsuyama, Scheffler, Davis Thompson, sneaky good around the green player. Davis Thompson had a lot of great up and downs at the John Deere Classic that helped him preserve that lead and win that tournament. Justin Thomas 4, Maverick McNeely 5, Morikawa, Cam Smith, C.T. Pan, Denny McCarthy, Mackenzie Hughes, Jorge Campillo rounding out the top 10. Scrambling on short grass, because with it being a links course, a lot of the scrambling this week is going to come from short grass. You've got Maverick McNeely, Mason Anderson pops up again, Scotty Scheffler, Denny McCarthy, and then a few no-names: Xander Schauffele, Ewan Ferguson, Patrick Cantlay, Hideki Matsuyama, best in the field at that stat. And then let's look at strokes gained around the green, specifically links courses. Who comes to the top? Phil Mickelson, Patrick Harrington, kind of expected those two, right? Ben Griffin, Tony Finau, Jason Day, Kurt Kitayama, Justin Thomas, Louis Oosthuizen, Max Homa, and Akshay Bhatia rounding out your top 10. Now, when it comes to putting, I wanted to look at putting on bent POA greens first, and then I wanted to look at putting on slow greens after that. And I also have putting baseline in here to compare so I can see who raises their baseline the most. Well, the top 10 in strokes gained putting on bent POA: McCarthy, Schauffele, Bradley, DeChambeau, Clark, M, Fleetwood, Hughes, Oosthuizen, and Hatton. What's interesting, though, is looking for the guys who raise their baseline the most. most. So Keegan Bradley, 68th in baseline strokes gained putting, 3rd on bent POA greens. Sung J M, 75th putting baseline, 6th on bent POA greens. Louis Oosthuizen has a weird sample size, so I'm not going to mention him. Eric Cole takes a big jump, as does Adam Hadwin and Minwoo Lee, and John Rahm and Robert McIntyre. And that's pretty much it for guys that have a notable sample size. Sepp Straka takes a pretty big jump as well. All right, now if we make it slow greens, who comes to the forefront? Well, the best putters on slow greens: JT Poston, Cam Smith, Christian Bezadenhout, Tom Hoagie, Denny McCarthy, Tommy Fleetwood, Sam Burns, Tyrrell Hatton, Robert McIntyre, and Eric Cole as your top 10. And that's pretty much it for putting. Also wanted to look at bogey avoidance in difficult conditions. Basically, just can you get up and down for par when you need to? The top 10 in that category are Schauffele, Scheffler, Morikawa, Fleetwood, McIlroy, Oberg, Matsuyama, McIntyre, McNeely, and Straka. Now, you throw all that into a model, and you would probably think that Scotty Scheffler would be my number one golfer, right? Not right. Number one ended up being Rory McIlroy, with Scotty Scheffler coming in at number 2, Xander Schauffele coming in at number 3. Now, keep in mind, with data being wonky from LIV and from the DP World Tour, those guys are not usually going to pop up near the top of the list. So Bryson DeChambeau, with all due respect, I consider him one of the best 4 golfers in the field. He is not near the top of my model. So why did Rory come out 1 ahead of Scotty 2? Well, the historical performance at links courses, the historical performance at Open Championships, and the fact that his long-term putting numbers are better than Scheffler are going to allow him to edge him out because their recent form is quite similar. So Rory McIlroy, 1, Scheffler 2, Schauffele 3. I think that that's a pretty solid top 3. Like I said, I think that Bryson is one of the top 4 best players in the field. I got the other 3, 1, 2, and 3. After that's where it gets interesting. Morikawa 4, Finau 5, Cantlay 6, Fleetwood 7, Rahm 8, Hatton 9, Harman 10. The top 20, Lowry, Kim, Hovland, Oberg, Spieth, Siwoo Kim, Matsuyama, Cam Smith, Matt Fitzpatrick, Dustin Johnson, and Bryson DeChambeau coming up next. All right, so that is the first run of my model. Now, I will mention this. If you want to see who makes the final top 10 of my final model, because I'm going to tinker with this all week long. If you want to see who makes my final model top 10, I do an article every single week on my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks, where I profile my DFS course for DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as my model top 10 and a full write-up on every single player that makes that model or makes the DFS course. So if you would like access to that, head on over to patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. That will grant you access to those weekly articles for the PGA Tour and LIV. And you will also get the weekly DFS course for college football and NFL once that comes up, as well as all of our college football and NFL best ball tools that are currently on the site. If you have questions about a specific player, I'm more than happy to answer you on Twitter at MikesMoneyPicks. Just reach out to me. I'm an open book. I'm more than happy to share my opinions. And then also I'm in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description. A lot of smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. And if you're looking to talk DFS for anything, I cannot recommend to join that enough. All right, so that does it for the rabbit hole. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the boards and see if we can identify some guys that we like this week. All right, so we're going to try something new this week. We're going to take a look at the board from the rabbit hole as opposed to just looking at it on DraftKings. That way we can have the strokes gained data, kind of as we go through it. So to me, this week presents a very interesting conundrum in DFS, in my opinion, because you've got a very clear top 4 in Scheffler, DeChambeau, McIlroy, Schauffele. They are the 4 best players in the field. When I construct my lineups, I will probably put in a rule that I want at least one of those 4 guys. I don't think I'm going to be dipping into the balance build this week unless we end up in a scenario where those 4 guys tee off at a very similar window of time, and it looks like that window of time is going to feature poor weather. That would be the only thing that could get me off of these 4 guys. So the question becomes, which one do you go with? Well, I think if there were ever a time to fade Scotty Scheffler, this would be it, which is a weird thing to say because he is coming off of a victory at the Travelers Championship, right? But keep in mind that he has not played since the Travelers Championship. He's been living it up, enjoying dad life, and I get it. Like, He absolutely deserves to do that. He's earned that ability. But it's natural to question his form coming in, with him not playing since the Travelers. And it's also natural to question his history at Open Championships, where he's finished in 8th, 21st, and 23rd. For any other golfer in the world, that's not a bad result. For Scottie Scheffler, it is not up to the standard that he has set in 2024. So I think if there were ever a time to fade Scottie Scheffler, this would be the week to do so. I will probably not be full fading Scottie Scheffler this week, but I do not think that I will be playing him at a field level of ownership because of his poor history in Opens, relatively poor history in Opens, and the fact that he is coming in with a lot of rust. So Bryson DeChambeau, I'm going to say the same thing I did about him in terms of what I said about him before the U.S. Open. If you remember that, I ended up being kind of right because he ended up winning. I don't think that this is the best course fit. I don't think that the Open Championship is the best tournament for him. However, he is playing at such a high level that I trust that he is so smart and so intelligent that he will be able to come up with a strategy that is effective and will allow him to play well at this tournament. Whether it is going driver off the tee and just, avoiding the gorse as much as possible, or if it comes down to, clubbing down off the tee. He's done that before and had success with it. So I don't know what the strategy is going to be, but I trust that Bryson will have it figured out and he will play well. And I hope in DFS, a lot of other guys see his mediocre history at Open Championships and, hear all about the course and emphasizing accuracy and precision and go away from Bryson. And I will gladly play Bryson in that regard. Rory McIlroy, I think this is a great spot for him. So you think about Rory's recent major heartbreaks, right? Which he's had a few. This is a course that there's no scar tissue, right? There's no sentimental value to Royal Troon. There's no heartbreak here yet. And so, I kind of think that this is a place where, if he really has that dog in him, as the kids like to say, holy crap, that made me sound 40. I teach high school, so I've heard that all the time. If he really has that dog in him, he can show up to Royal Troon and play well. And I really do think this is a good spot for Rory McIlroy. Of the 4 guys near the top, I will probably be the most overweight to Rory McIlroy. Now, I'm probably going to be slightly underweight to Xander Schauffele. And the reason why is quite simple. When is the last time that we saw a first-time major winner win events after winning that first major? I think you'd have to go back to Jordan Spieth back in 2015 after winning the Masters and then winning the U.S. Open that same summer before you have a first-time major winner that was effective in tournaments the year of. So I kind of think that Xander is riding that first-time major winner high. I think he's a splendid fit for the course. He has such a balanced game that he's going to play well anywhere. So I think that he's a very safe pick. He's a guy that should make the cut. Even if he gets in a bad weather wave, he should make the cut and play pretty well, but I don't necessarily think that he's as likely to win the tournament as the other 3 guys near the top. Jon Rahm is pretty simple. Unless he shows me something at Live Andalusia this week, I'm probably going to full fade Jon Rahm. I did it at the PGA. I did it largely at the Masters and don't regret it one bit. So not going to be on Jon Rahm unless he shows me something at Live this week. I just think he's broken. I think the move to Live has not helped his game at all. I think he's not happy. Now, granted, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to try to play psychologist, but just you look at what he's done in majors, and there's absolutely zero argument that this guy should be in the 10K range here in the 2024 calendar year. Ludwig Åberg, I like a lot. So here's the deal with Ludwig. He's a deceptively good putter and a deceptively good around the green player. In majors. He's been good around the green in majors. But what I like about Ludwig is he drives the ball so long and so straight that he might be able to just pull driver where everybody else is laying up. Just because he can hit it past the bunkers, he can keep it straight enough to keep it out of the gorse. That's going to be a supreme advantage. Keep in mind, I'm recording this on the Friday of the Scottish Open. Ludwig played very well on Thursday. He kind of did the same thing at the Scottish Open. I don't know how that tournament's going to play out. If Ludwig wins or is in contention at the Scottish, his ownership is going to skyrocket for this tournament because he's the guy out of anybody else down the board that you can make an argument is on par with the other guys near the top. Collin Morikawa. I got to say, he's going to be a full fade for me this week. And the reason why is because I do not trust him in weather. I do not trust him at links courses. You might be sitting there saying, well, Mike, he won the Open in his debut. Yeah, did you watch that week? That weather was like, I don't know, like North Carolina weather. It was not your typical Scotland wind and clouds. He won it when the sun was out. Like, that was not your typical Open Championship. So I am not going to be playing Morikawa this week. I'm not going to regret it either. I will say, with Morikawa, his stat profile is so darn good. He is such a good approach player, and his around the green play and his putting has finally come around to match that. And he is so precise off the tee that, honestly, he's a great stat fit. He's a great course fit. I just don't think he's good in weather. I don't think he's good in links golf. I think he prefers the American aerial, docile conditions, no wind, trackman golf. And that's okay. He can play that kind of golf in America. I'm not going to be playing him here at this tournament. I might be wrong. Like I said, it's a great stat profile. It's a great course fit, but full fading Colin this week for me. Now, the next range, I'm going to be on the next two guys, Victor Hovland and Tyrrell Hatton. So for Victor Hovland, if there were one player in the field who has a stat profile similar to Henrik Stenson when he was coming into the Open Championship, it is Victor Hovland. And here's what I mean by that. He is both not short off the tee, but gains on accuracy. He is an elite iron player with all the irons in his bag, from short irons to long irons to wedges. He's elite with all of them. And he's a very poor around the green player, but is good around the green in links golf. And that's because he has the option of putting from off the greens. And Henrik Stenson was the same way. Henrik Stenson, you go back and watch the Open Championship that he won that we've talked about in 2016. That's what he was doing from off the greens. He was putting. He was not doing a lot of chipping. And he hit more greens than everybody else, which allowed him to not have to chip as much as everybody else. So I think the Victor is the exact stat profile that we want. I'm curious to see how the Scottish Open goes for him this week, but I really do think that this is a great buy low opportunity on Victor, who, you know, if we were talking about Victor this time, like 10 months ago, like right around when my daughter was born, right around the end of the FedEx Cup playoffs, he was thought of as being like a top 3 golfer in the world. He was talked about as being a guy who was very likely to win this event. So I'm not changing course on that now just because he's had a very poor around the green year in 2024, because that around the green play should not matter a lot at this event. I also love Tyrrell Hatton at this course. I think he's significantly overpriced in DFS, but I think you look at what he's done in the majors this year, it's been good. Like, no debate, Bryson has been the MVP for LIV in the majors. He's really carried their water. Tyrrell Hatton's probably second with a 9th, a 63rd, and a 26th. He's made all 3 cuts. He is a accurate off-the-tee player. He's generally a good approach player. He's generally a good around the green player. He is generally a good putter. And so, like, that's kind of what we want this week, right? We want a guy who is going to be precise off the tee, who is going to be able to make pars when others make bogey, and is going to be precise enough with his irons to, give himself some birdie looks. Now, after Hatton, you have Fleetwood. And look, I got to say, everybody loves to play Tommy in DFS. He always comes in as chalk, especially in majors. I think that it's a great course fit for him. He's an accurate off the tee guy, but I just don't know if he actually possesses the upside to win the event, just because he never does. You look at his stat profile lately, and he's kind of played whack-a-mole. Like, one category fails one week, and then the next week he gets it right, and another one is bad, and then it's just a pattern, right? If he ever puts all 4 stat categories together, he might be able to finally win a major. But I don't know, man. I'm probably going to be lower to the field in DFS on Tommy Fleetwood. Patrick Cantlay is another full fade for me. I don't know what's going on with him. He played quite well at the U.S. Open, played quite well at the Travelers. I don't like him in links golf. I don't like how he withdrew from the John Deere and didn't play the Scottish. And, he didn't capitalize on the good form he had or do anything to improve it. So Cantlay is going to be out for me. Brooks Koepka is a guy that I'm going to love playing in DFS this week. And it's quite simple why. Everybody is forgetting how good Brooks Koepka is in majors, because he hasn't been good in majors in 2024. Brooks Koepka is still Brooks Koepka. He is still going to show up for this tournament. And if nobody's talking about it, that's going to make him a low-owned leverage play in DFS, which we love in DFS. And I am going to play me some Brooks Koepka this week. People also forget the Brooks Koepka, he did not, kind of go through the normal path to the PGA Tour. He played on the Challenge Tour in Europe, played at a lot of links courses in windy conditions, and worked his way on the PGA Tour. So he is no stranger to links golf. He has a good Open Championship track record. I like Brooks Koepka at $9,000 in DFS. Now, Cameron Smith, probably going to be a full fade for me this week because you simply cannot miss big with the driver. What is Cam Smith's big weakness? He misses big with the driver. He's a terrible driver of the golf ball. Now, if he can keep that in check, he has the rest of the game to play well here at Royal Troon. He won the Open Championship at St. Andrews, but I don't think that that's a good comp for this one because that one featured very wide fairways, and he can get away with missing big because missing big was still on the fairway. He also has the ability to scramble his tail off and make par even if he ends up in the gorse bush. But I just don't think he has the type of game that we like here this week at Royal Troon. All right, now, you guys are going to have to go with me for a second here on this one. I'm going to kind of go into my Colin Cowherd, Bill Simmons metaphor bag here, okay? Tony Finau. I love Tony Finau this week. I'm just going to get it out there. I think Tony Finau is like Dak Prescott. Here's what I mean by that. He came up, showed a ton of talent, showed a lot of promise, was super likable, always smiling, always happy, really easy guy to root for. But as time has gone on, he's never won the big one. And sometimes he's played well, and it wasn't his fault that he didn't win. Look at Tony at the U.S. Open this year. Tony played really well. If Bryson doesn't get up and down from the bunker and Finau holds one more putt, then Tony Finau's in a 3-man playoff. You think about Dak Prescott, the loss to the Packers early in his career, where he leads a game-tying drive, and then Aaron Rodgers undoes all of it in like 20 seconds. It's a very similar comparison. But now they're getting older, and you're wondering, has it passed them by? Are they going to have another opportunity to win the big one, or are they going to be able to do it again? Well, this is the time for Tony Finau. This is a course that he played well at the first time around in 2016. He is at his best at putting on bent grass. It's the only surface he is positive for. And he's playing the best golf of his career at all different kinds of courses. A Birdie Fest PGA Championship finishes 18th. Short precision course Charles Schwab Challenge, T17. Memorial, great test of driving the golf ball, T8. U.S. Open at Pinehurst, T3, Traveler, short course, T5. He is getting it done at every type of course, and his approach play has been supreme. He has a great Open Championship history, only the one missed cut, but other than that, no finishes worse than 28th. I think the time is now for Tony Finau. He is going to be one of my most owned players in DFS this week. He's going to be a guy that I bet outright to win this golf tournament. I think the time is now for Tony Finau. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute, Mike, everybody's hyping up Tony Finau this week. I've heard a few people hype up Tony Finau this week. That is accurate. But keep in mind, last year when Brian Harman won the Open, Brian Harman was like supreme chalk in DraftKings DFS. Everybody was talking about Brian Harman because of the form he was coming in at and because of the course fit. So, hey, Tony Finau coming in great form, great course fit. I don't care if he's going to be high owned. I'm so confident that I'm going to be right, that he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be playing a ton in DFS. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to create an ownership gap between the next few guys, Matsuyama, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry, Matt Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark, all of whom I think have great arguments. Hideki is generally a great majors player, playing some of the best golf of his career, is the best around the green player in the field. So if this course plays super difficult, Hideki is a guy who can get up and down at a higher rate than the rest of the field. Tom Kim has been simply outstanding on approach. We talked about all summer how I think Tom Kim is trending for a win. We're going to see how the tournament in Scotland goes, but I really think Tom Kim is heading in that right direction as well. T2 in the Open last year, so he clearly knows how to get around links golf. And speaking of guys who know how to get around links golf, you got Shane Lowry and Matt Fitzpatrick sitting right there. And I don't think anybody's going to play either of them in DFS. I don't necessarily think either of them have the upside to win this event, but I think both make for supremely good low-owned DFS plays. And then Wyndham Clark, this guy's getting disrespected on price again. If he was very disrespected at the Scottish Open. If he plays well at the Scottish Open, he's going to see a big ownership boost because he's going to be very clearly a mispriced sitting there at $8,000 in DFS. All right, so with all of that, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's take a look at the value plays. All right, so I got to be honest. I think this is one of the strongest 7K and 6K ranges I have seen on a DraftKings board in quite some time. And the reason why is because I think the bottom of the field is so bad and there's so many quality players that they just kind of with the pricing algorithm had to put some of them in the 7K range, had to put some of them in the 6K range, right? I find it really easy to build a lineup this week if you go with 2 guys near the top and then like 4 7K guys. So if you're talking about like what might be a likely construction or a chalky construction, I would try to minimize how many 7K guys you have. I like these guys. I think they're good plays, but I think the easy build is going to be to play 4 of these guys and then 2 guys from the top. So I would try to stay away from that archetype of a build if you are looking to be different on DraftKings DFS this week. Now, talking about the specific plays in the 7K range, like I said, there's a lot to like this week. Jordan Spieth, historically great links player, total wild card. If no one's talking about Jordan Spieth this week, I think that's a great time to play him because his history at links golf, he has the ability and the craftiness to kind of just get around and make par from wherever, like even like the clubhouse earlier this year. And you think about Phil Mickelson coming in second, who's kind of like the modern Phil Mickelson. It's kind of like Jordan Spieth, right? Just this guy that escapes from seemingly anywhere. So I would not be surprised to see Spieth come in at super low ownership and come in with like a T12 finish here this week. Joaquin Niemann, I don't think has a great history in opens. Doesn't have a great history in majors, like at all, if we're being honest. But if we're talking about Joaquin Niemann, we know he hits this low shot shape, this low draw, and so that kind of plays well for links golf, or at least it should, right? But his history at Open Championships quite poor. He's never finished inside the top 50. So I will probably be fading Joaquin Niemann, even though I do think his shot plays well for a course like this. Robert McIntyre is playing in his homeland of Scotland, and that's going to mean a lot to him. And he's generally not a good approach player, which we don't like, but he can get scorching hot with the putter, especially on bent Poa greens. And he's also pretty good with a driver in his hand. So I definitely know this guy has experience playing links golf. I know he has a good history at the Open Championship. He's got the added bonus of playing in his home country. I like Robert McIntyre this week. He's a guy who's going to be in my lineups at 7,700. Brian Harman, only the defending champ, and no one's talking about him. Would not have a problem playing Brian Harman. Cameron Young is like the most interesting man in golf right now to me. I genuinely never know what this man is going to do because he had been really bad in 2023 or 2024, from basically after the Masters till the Rocket Mortgage or till the Travelers, sorry. And in that tournament, the Travelers, he was great, fired 59. And was great tee to green and did the same thing at the Rocket Mortgage and was neutral with the putter in both of those events and, had 2 top 10 finishes. Was great. I don't know if that's going to continue or not, but he has a great Open Championship track record, was runner-up at St. Andrews, was 8th last year at Royal Liverpool, tends to show up in the majors. So is this a guy who was broken and is now fixed? I don't know, but I'm willing to take a chance at $7,500 on DraftKings. Now, looking down the board, you got Minwoo Lee, great driver, great putter, experienced links player. Don't mind it. Justin Thomas is playing well in the Scottish Open right now as I record this. Very poor links player. Probably not on him. Same deal with Max Homa. A guy that I like this week is Sepp Straka. So you look at the metrics that we were talking about off the tee, effectiveness on club down courses, distance from edge of fairway. Well, Sepp is a guy who ranks really well in those metrics. And so even though he's not playing all that well coming in, it's largely due to his around the green play and his putting. And the ball striking numbers have still been there. And so if he's able to do the same thing and keep the ball striking at the same level that it's been at since the Masters and just not bleed strokes around the green with the putter, I think this is a great spot for Sepp. He's going to keep it in play off the tee. He was in the log jam at T2 last year at the Open Championship, so he can play links golf. I think this is a great, great spot for Sepp Straka. He is going to be a guy that ends up in my DFS lineups. Now, a guy that I have already bet to win, which, by the way, my betting card, I'm going to be in South Carolina for this tournament where online gambling is not legal. So I have placed 3 futures bets. They're on the 3 guys that I've said are going to win a tournament before the summer is over. Tony Finau, Tom Kim, Akshay Bhatia. Boom. Those are my 3 guys. I got each ways on them, and that's going to be how I ride unless I decide to add something before I travel to South Carolina. Now, Akshay, great off the tee player. Great driver of the golf ball, long and straight, great approach player. has been a good putter as the tour has moved to bent grass greens. And so I really like what Akshay has done. He's a great wind player as well. I just can't say enough about how every kind of metric that I look at, he checks all of the boxes. And I think Akshay's in a great spot, $7,000 here in this tournament. I like that he's not playing the Scottish Open for ownership purposes, because I think if he did play it, it was a great course fit for him and he would be shooting up the board in terms of ownership. I will gladly take him at $7,000 in DraftKings. Sungjae Im is like the ultimate wild card because he's playing well at the Scottish Open. He's been great in the calendar year 2024, except in majors. He's missed the cut at all 3 majors so far. He's got a pretty good track record in win, okay track record in links golf. Don't mind going to Sungjae Im. Davis Thompson is just playing incredibly well. If you believe in the kid's talent, believe in it again at the majors. Great around the green player, great approach player. Don't mind it at 6,900. Ryan Fox is kind of a links specialist. Did very well in a lot of links golf courses on the DP World Tour. In fact, there are a few of those in this field. You've got Ryan Fox at 6,800. You've got Jordan Smith at 6,500. You've also got Victor Perez, 6,200. I don't mind at all. Alexander Bjork is another one. Sammy Valimaki is another one. Matthew Southgate would be another one. There's a lot of guys that are, kind of these random Euros. You tend to see a random Euro pop up on every Open Championship leaderboard, I feel like. So I would not mind going with one of those random Euros this week. And I think Ryan Fox, even though he plays his golf on the PGA Tour right now, he's kind of the king of the random Euros, in my opinion. Now, another guy that I like this week is going to be, I lost him. Give me 1 second, y'all. Nikolai Højgaard. There he is. So Nikolai Højgaard is a super long driver of the golf ball who is coming in on not great form, but the approach play has been good. He's been really positive. 3 straight events in the approach play. It's the rest of his game that has kind of been erratic, but we've seen historically over the long run, the rest of his game has shown glimpses of getting there, especially his off the tee play. And so if he brings the same level of approach play that he has had, I think that this could be a pretty good spot for Nikolai Højgaard. He's got experience playing links golf, $6,700 for salary. I do not mind it at all. I got to say the 6K and 5K range don't have nearly the amount of options as the 7K range does on DraftKings this week. Not a lot of guys that I'm interested in betting this week from all the way down here. I did mention Sammy Valimaki already. He's probably a guy that I like a ton at 5,600, just a great links golf player. There's 2 young guys in the 5K range that I want to mention, though. First one is Austin Eckroat. So Austin Eckroat ranks 12th in the calendar year 2024 in this field on strokes gained approach. That is not easy. This kid is very talented. He is going to get it all together. We've seen him play well at majors. He had a top 10 at the U.S. Open last year. Doesn't have a great track record of links golf, but to me, this is a great spot at a guy that, not a lot of people are going to be playing people in DFS in the 5K range at all. He's a great leverage play on a guy that's very talented, certainly more talented than the other guys in this range. I don't mind it at 5,700. And everything I said kind of goes ditto for Ryo Hisatsune, who has just been awful with the putter, but all other aspects of his game have been very good recently, and I do not mind him at 5,700 either. So those are kind of the guys in the 5K range, aside from the random Euros that I'm considering. I also like Ben Griffin. So Ben Griffin is one of the best putters of the golf ball on the PGA Tour. And he's been playing really well recently. You look at what he's done, his approach play has just been incredible. His off the tee play is generally not all that great, but at this course, just keep it in play off the tee and you're going to be A-okay, right? So I really do think that Ben Griffin's in a pretty good spot. He did miss the cut in his first Open Championship appearance last year, but he's playing the Scottish Open this week. He's played well at the Scottish Open before, so I would not mind taking a shot at Ben Griffin at 5,900. The 3 guys that I've just mentioned for the 5K range, I think they make for great top 20 bets. We've talked about this before on the show, but what I love to do is I love a good top 20 parlay where I kind of, go with a few guys near the top. I also love to just bet like 2 or 3 guys near the bottom for just a random top 20. So that way all you need is like 1 or 2 of them to get it. So that way you can end up being profitable for the week. Those would probably be the guys that I would end up taking that shot on, in addition to those random Euro guys that I talked about, like Bjork and Southgate. All right, that does it for the value plays. Let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to talk about one and done. All right, so let's close this thing out by talking about one and done really quickly. So This is where you need to start understanding how many events are left and how to ration your remaining players, right? So if you think about the remaining schedule, there is the Open Championship this week that we're talking about. And then there is the 3M and the Wyndham. I would assume that most one and dones are not doing the Olympics, given that there is no money prize purse. But if you're doing something like strokes or something like aggregate finish, made cuts, some weird one and done format, you might be doing the Olympics as well. And then there's the 2 FedEx Cup playoff events, the FedEx St. Jude and the BMW Championship. One and dones, I will die on this hill, should not be playing the Tour Championship because of the starting strokes and because of the insane prize purse. So pretty much you've got this event, 2 weeks that most of the big guns are going to skip, and then 2 FedEx Cup playoff events, right? You got 5 remaining events. The big dogs are going to play 3 of them. So it comes down to who you want to ration where. So as you can see for this entry that we've got right here, I have already used Scotty, Rory, and Xander. If you have not used Rory or Xander, I think that this is one of the best spots for them. Rory is typically not a great player at the FedEx St. Jude or at the style of course that the BMW Championship is at, the Jack Nicklaus designed Castle Pines that we know very little about. So I would think this is the best spot to use Rory if you still have Rory remaining. He has great Open Championship history. Cannot stress that enough. If you have Scotty or Xander, I would be looking to save one of those 2 guys for the FedEx Cup playoffs. Personally, they have good history at FedEx St. Jude. They have a style of a game that should translate well to the Castle Pines course for the BMW Championship. So I think, Rory is really the only one of the big 3 that I would be looking to use at this event. Also, the Open Championship, with it being a major, has live golfers. So if you have Bryson remaining, or if you have Brooks remaining, I think you got to use those guys this week if you have them. Bryson has been the best live golfer in the 3 majors so far this year. Winning the U.S. Open, runner-up at the PGA, top 10 at the Masters. I know his Open Championship resume is not the best, but if you have Bryson remaining, I think the optimal decision is to use Bryson and look at your remaining guys for the remaining events. Jon Rahm is also here. I have no desire to use Jon Rahm in one and done. Yes, I acknowledge that would probably mean that I didn't use Jon Rahm this year. But if he doesn't give us any usable weeks, then what's the point anyway? So in terms of the live guys, I would probably pass on Jon Rahm, and I would be much more likely to play Tyrrell Hatton as my live guy at this event. He is a guy that is a live guy. He has a history here. He was 5th in 2016. I think he's a pretty good look for this event. If you're really looking to get different and you're really looking to use a live guy, Louis Oosthuizen would be a guy that I think you could go with. This is his first appearance of the year usable in one and done, because he has not played in any of the other 3 majors, but he's been great on live. He's been great on the DP World Tour when he played it this year. I think that if you're looking to use a live guy and looking to get different, Louis Oosthuizen is a great option to go with. Other than that, again, you need to be counting out, how many guys you have left and who you're going to use where. Ludwig looks like he would be a pretty good pick here, but I think Ludwig's game will translate well to any of the remaining events. I think it's quite likely that he plays either the 3M Open or the Wyndham, and then I certainly think it's likely he's going to play both the FedEx Cup playoff events. So if you want to save Ludwig, I think that's a pretty good strategy. With this entry that I'm picking right here, with me already using Scotty, Rory, and Xander, I'm going to want Ludwig for the FedEx Cup playoffs, so I'm going to save him. I'm going to save Morikawa for the FedEx Cup playoffs as well. You've got a short positional course that he should play well at the FedEx St. Jude. You've got a Jack Nicklaus design that he should play well at in the BMW Championship. I think he's a great nominee to save for the FedEx Cup playoffs. So really, that brings us to this kind of mid-range. You can either use a live guy or you can use somebody in the mid-range. I think Fleetwood and Harmon are solid options. We've mentioned my affinity for Tony Finau at this event. However, I think it's highly likely that Tony Finau plays the 3M Open. So if you need somebody for the 3M Open, Tony Finau will be a great selection there. Tom Kim is in the same boat as Finau. I think he's great for this event, but I think it's highly likely that he plays the Wyndham, given that he won the last time he teed it up there. Same deal with Russell Henley, a great history at the Wyndham. So those 2 guys, I think you can make an argument to save. Matt Fitzpatrick, I think, is a pretty good nominee for this event. Sepp Straka, I think, is a pretty good nominee for this event. But now we're getting pretty far down the board into some kind of unknown guy. Well, not unknown guys, but guys that you don't really want to be looking to use in a major. If you don't want to use a live guy, but you want to be different, I think Shane Lowry is a great nominee for that. I think Robert McIntyre and Nikolai Højgaard are great nominees for that. All right, so let's settle down here. Let's go ahead and make our selection. I'm going to pick, looking at all my options available, I'm going to go with Tyrrell Hatton. I think that this is a great course fit for him. He's playing good golf. He's probably going to be a pretty chalky pick because if you're near the top of the leaderboard, you probably use Bryson in either the PGA or the US Open, just thinking about, the names that are near the top of the leaderboard, right? So I think that he's going to be a pretty popular pick, but I just think that he makes a ton of sense for this course, makes a ton of sense in terms of the broader context of a one and done. And I feel pretty confident with where I'm sitting, just outside the money right now. I've got the two FedEx Cup playoff events where I can gain a lot of ground, and I'm going to have Ludwig, Colin, Cantlay, Fleetwood, Tom Kim, all at my disposal for those events. So I feel like I certainly can gain ground on the rest of the field in the FedEx Cup playoffs because of who I have remaining. If you don't feel like you have a lot of guys remaining, then you might not want to go with a chalky pick this week. You might want to go with someone a little off the board because this week will likely be your last week to be able to gain ground in one and done. All right, so that does it for the one and done portion of the show, and that does it for our 2024 Open Championship preview. To recap, we went over the course. We went over all the key stats for this course. We identified some guys that we'd like for betting in DFS. Like I said, my betting card right now is 3 each ways on the 3 guys that I think are going to win before the summer is over. Tom Kim, Tony Finau, Akshay Bhatia. May add one more to that depending on how I feel, depending on how the rest of the Scottish Open goes. Now, in terms of one and done, we just picked Tyrrell Hatton. And that's going to do it. If you want to know our official thoughts for DFS, as well as our final model top 10, subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. Also, we just released an episode last night about the Pup Cup, which is Underdog Fantasy's FedEx Cup Playoffs best ball drafts for the PGA Tour. So check that out if you are interested in doing some best ball drafts for the FedEx Cup Playoffs. I promise there's some good information in there. It will help you kind of think through and strategize those best ball drafts for the FedEx Cup Playoffs. I think it's really good content. I think you guys, if you enjoyed this one, you should enjoy that as well. If you did enjoy this episode, if it helped you out at all, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel so that we can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season. Rate and review. If you're on audio, you can subscribe to the audio feed as well. But other than that, that's going to do it, y'all. Like I said, I love this tournament. I'm really looking forward to waking up early in the morning next week and watching some golf. I've gone over how I have a 10-month-old daughter. And I got to say, this upcoming week, if she wants to wake up early in the middle of the night on Thursday and Friday, bring it on. I'm just going to turn on golf on my phone. So, I really like the idea of having golf on early in the morning. I'm really looking forward to it, in case you guys cannot tell. All right, so best of luck to you guys in the Open Championship. Hopefully this episode was able to help you pick some winners. Thank you guys for watching the list to this point, and I will see you guys next time.